Rejection hurts. It's in our wiring. I never heard anything back from anyone except one, and I didn't hear back until I'd already applied to the 7th, and that's when I got the TEDx talk.
After pilot, the career search #1 in the world is to become a writer. What if I told you that before landing a big 5-book deal, Colette Fehr spent 6 years stuck at chapter 0 before finalizing The Cost of Quiet? Before securing her TEDx talk, she got rejected 6 times, and before stepping into the TV world, she found herself pitching an idea at a sushi bar. Colette Fehr is a licensed marriage and family therapist, a mental health counselor, and co-host of Insights from the Couch podcast. Her journey to success was anything but easy. It wasn't a straight line. It wasn't overnight. It was built on rejection, resilience, and, as she puts it, manifesting the out of it. From walking away from the perfect marriage to becoming a relationship expert, from facing rejection after rejection before landing her TEDx talk to making her way onto TV, Colette has lived the advice she gives. Rejection isn't a stop sign, it's a test of how much you're willing to persevere. I'd start with the Incredible Trifecta. You're like soon to be Penguin Random House published author, so you got a big 5-book deal. You will soon be a TEDx speaker, and you're now also stepping into the TV world. If you had to distill the core message of all 3 into one sentence, what would it be?
You can make anything you want happen.
That's perfect, I think. One of my favorite lines from your TEDx talk, the upcoming TEDx talk, is you don't have to feel brave, you just have to be willing. And I know this is also one of your favorite quotes. How has that mindset played out in your career?
I think when I was much younger, I was really afraid to step into discomfort and anything I didn't already feel really good at, because I thought I would embarrass myself. And I think I used to see talent as more of a fixed capacity rather than what I know to be true now as a licensed therapist from many years of doing therapy and also just working on myself, that anyone can really do anything if we set our mind to it and we're willing to persevere. So it's really more about grit. So I decided to shift the way I looked at things and focus less on what am I so naturally talented at and more on what do I want? What lights me up? What brings me joy? If I'm going to get out of bed every day and be excited, what does that look like? And I love being a therapist, but around the time when my children graduated from high school here in the United States and went off to college, I had more free time. And I thought, what else do I want to do with my life? I'd always wanted to be an author. I've always wanted to be a speaker. I've always wanted to do more in TV, but I always felt afraid. So that line is really reflective of who cares? Be afraid. You can't stop your feelings anyway. But go for it and let the fear kind of just move with you as you pursue your goals.
What I know about you is that you've shared deeply about your first marriage. So this is like how everything started, I guess, with your with your book and with your TEDx and also with your TV show in the future. You learned that your life looked perfectly on the outside, but emotionally you felt very lonely. Did you realize first that something had to change in your life?
You know, I got married very young, at least by the standards that I grew up with. I grew up in the New York City area in a suburb there, and people tended to focus on their career and then get married. But I married a guy I went to college with. I'd been dating since I was 18. So we kind of grew up together, and the next step was marriage. And, you know, neither of us was a bad person, but we're all the product of our home life and what we see modeled in our parents. And in generations past, I mean, I'm 51 years old, focusing on emotions, being attuned to emotions, connecting in that way wasn't something a lot of us got or saw when we were growing up. So I'm a very emotional and very connected human being, which is part of why I love being a therapist. But I started to feel that there was some void in the relationship. Yet at the time, I didn't have the language for it. I didn't understand attachment science. I didn't know that we're wired to bond as human beings. So my husband was there and we had this great life and we had a lot of fun and we had great friends and we had these 2 beautiful little daughters. But there was this big hole and I did feel very alone. And I wasn't able to really put it into words. The few times I tried, I didn't get a good response. renaissance. So I sort of foreclosed on trying to get my needs met. And eventually things kind of blew up in my face and I ended up getting divorced. But of course, like many difficult things, it really led to this renaissance in my own life of discovering myself. And I became a therapist because of my divorce. So it's really my mission to help other people with their relationship struggles, those who want to preserve their relationships, because I don't believe every relationship is meant to last. I do believe we're meant to form deep connections with ourselves. And through that inner emotional knowing, that's how we can really connect with other people. And that makes for a happy life.
Colette, this has been incredible. Your journey is proof that resilience, belief, and taking action, no matter how scary, lead to amazing things. And if you've loved this conversation, you're going to love what we have inside the Online Writing Club. So check it out. When you walked away from like this external success, from your hobby and everything, did you ever feel judged for leaving him and your life? And how did you handle this?
I felt tremendously judged. In fact, I really lost my whole social circle. Now, most of those relationships weren't that deep or connected. So, in a sense, maybe it's not really such a loss. However, at the time, all the people in my life thought I was the bad guy because I chose to leave. And I had daughters who were 1.5 and 3.5. So this is not something women typically do. And women are judged more harshly than men, I believe, despite all of our advances. Society, even women, are so quick to like criticize other women and tear them down. And really, the truth is, nobody knew the nuances, just like we never do, about what was going on behind closed doors in the relationship. And it was not an easy decision, but it wasn't healthy for me to stay in that relationship. Now, I will say, knowing what I know now, I wish I had handled myself a little differently. I wish we'd been able to find better help. We went to marriage counseling and it was a terrible counselor who wasn't well trained, which was part of why I became a marriage counselor myself. But I was definitely judged. I felt vilified. I felt more alone initially. And I had to really fall back on what I knew to be true about myself and who I am. I'm lucky. I did still have a close circle of friends and I'm very close to my family, but none of them really lived here. So it was a very lonely time and I had to go to work. I hadn't worked in years. I was a stay-at-home mom. I had to kind of develop a career out of nowhere. For a while, I was in graduate school working. So I'd be lying if I said it was an easy couple of years. But I do really believe everyone's got to do a cost benefit analysis of your mental health, how rewarding your relationship is, what your financial situation is. There are so many variables. And hopefully, as time goes on, we're going to continue to get less judgmental about divorce because sometimes it is the better thing. You have one short life to live. And if you're not happy, that is a wake up call right then and there. Now, maybe you don't have to pull the plug without giving it some effort first, especially if there are children involved. But, if you've tried that, and nothing changes, it takes two people to create a healthy dynamic. And sometimes partners can't or won't work with us. So sometimes it's the right decision. And I think you got to know what's true for you.
And do you still can talk with your ex-hubby?
So we've been divorced for 20 years. I think we're on fine terms, but I wish we were friendlier than we are. Like we're fine in front of the kids, but we don't like talk otherwise. I'm not going to call them and be like, how was your golf game?
And I know that you've said, I learned that no matter how my partner behaves, I always have a choice, which I think is very important, especially if you're in a toxic relationship or, I don't know, experiencing domestic violence or whatever. How did this mindset shift impact the way you now approach relationships?
Yeah, so I've been with my current husband now for 12 years, married for 8 years. And I think I really changed my mindset during the years I became a therapist, which is part of why I want to write this book on relationship communication, because not everyone should have to get divorced or become a therapist in order to know how to show up. And no matter what, if you're doing your part and take responsibility for your part side of the street by communicating with vulnerability and a assertiveness, being clear, sharing your deeper emotions, expressing what you need. No one can read your mind. Then, and also not being reactive, even if your partner is reactive, because it takes two to tango. If you keep your side of the street clear, then you have information about what your relationship can and cannot offer you much sooner, and you can make a decision, right? If you keep showing up like a mature adult and your partner continues to fire at you or cross boundaries, gets ugly, then you can say, all right, do I want to continue to put up with this or not? People make the mistake of trying to control their partner's behavior, manage their partner's emotions, get someone else to change, or blaming someone else. That's a waste of energy. Focus on you and see how you feel about the impact your partner has on you when you're doing the right thing. And then you can decide how you want to live your life and what kind of relationship you want to enjoy.
Yeah, and talking about all this, I know that in spring 2026, Penguin Random House will publish your book. So this will be your debut then, which I love.
Yes.
This is
Yes.
amazing. So congratulations. This is like the best thing,
Thank
Colette,
you.
that can happen. So awesome. And what I read was that I think it was your editor, and she actually told you not to go all in on social media to build your platform, which is the opposite of conventional advice. What was the reasoning behind this? Why did she tell you or gave you this advice?
They didn't quite tell me that. They just said that, if you don't have a huge platform on social media, then you have to have a huge platform somewhere else. Maybe you're a professor or you give lots of talks the irony is that I sort of did everything backwards, a little bit like my personal life where I got married young, had daughters, and then built my career. I am the somewhat unique case, perhaps, of somebody who got the agent and the book contract before a nonfiction book, before I had any platform or outreach at all. And that was pretty unusual because I had been living my life and running my career. I built my job as a couples therapist through a very word of mouth business. And I stayed off the radar because people kind of like the therapy thing to be really private. And I was lucky that my business was successful without doing any traditional marketing. And I'm 51, so I didn't know anything about social media. I would post pictures of, my family or my kids like everyone else. And I had maybe 300 followers on Instagram and some people on Facebook. So when I first joined up with my agent, she said, at first she was like, no, you have no platform. You have no platform. But I really like you. I really like the writing. I really resonate with what your book is about because my book is about finding and using your voice. It's called The Cost of Quiet, Why Avoiding Conflict Hurts Your Relationship and How Speaking Up Can Save It. And it's not coming out for a while still because the publishing process is slow. But basically, I had to convince my agent and then also my publishers that, okay, I don't have a platform, but I have something important to say that's going to help people improve their lives because relationships are the most important thing in our lives. And I will do everything in my power to build a platform. I'll try everything. And you won't be disappointed if you take a chance on me. So I had to kind of convince them with my determination that I was worth the risk.
Yeah, so and now I know, Colette, that you mentioned, for instance, Instagram. I think you have 12,000 followers there on Instagram. Am I right about this?
I have just over 12,000 on Instagram. I have over 8,000 on TikTok, and I'd never even been on TikTok a year and a half ago. And I have about 3,000, I think, on Facebook, maybe about 5,000 on LinkedIn. But what I've also been doing, I just am new to Substack, so I really want to focus there because I really love the platform and it feels different to me. People feel nice. It feels like real human beings. There's so many writers. I really love it compared to some of the other social media that I don't think I understand quite as intuitively, despite the fact that I've had some success. And what I've also really done is to do a lot of, I'm a talker. I like to be on the news. I enjoy it. Not like I want to be in the limelight. I'm really not after attention, but I enjoy talking to people and I enjoy public speaking. So I've been focusing a lot of my efforts there as well.
And I think that you really build a flywheel. So a flywheel, how I always define it is that you can take like one piece of content, it can be for instance a long form post or so, and then you can repurpose this like pieces of it on other platforms. So you don't have to do more, which is very important, especially if you're doing this part-time. It's really about just repurposing it to amplify your message. Could you share a bit more about your flywheel and how you want to, let's call it like kickstart it now with the book, TEDx, and of course also your TV show then?
Yeah. So I'm learning on the go because I'm not a marketer. So I didn't even know the term flywheel or even realize I was doing that. I'm trying to get better at doing that, honestly, because it's so much. And I have a busy full-time practice here, and I'm a podcaster, and I run a group for women. And so there's so many things going on, just and a lot of public speaking. So the more I think you can get strategic and smart about it while being your authentic self, the better. Something I did on Substack today, as this is a little bit newer to me, I wrote a post just kind of organically. I wrote a note, and then I pulled one sentence out of the note that pertained to relationships. And on Instagram, I'm kind of more on there as a couples therapist than a writer, but I'm trying to also let people know that I have this Substack account. And I just amplified that one line and then wrote a new caption from that line. So I think you can also pivot. I would say, though, my biggest advice to people, and it's hard, I've been through ups and downs with this social media thing, but the biggest advice, and I think the best advice, is find a way to do it that you enjoy, where you can show up like you and where you talk about what you really want to talk about. Because if you do that, it's going to shine through the energy. And I think when we try to go, okay, what do people want to hear? And how should I say this? And how do I need to be? It comes across more stilted. I don't think it resonates as much with people. But I have to also say there is an algorithm you're up against on some of this social media, and it can be very difficult. I had a viral video at one point a long time ago that helped me get some followers. And then all of a sudden, about just over a year ago, I started losing followers on Instagram. I have no idea why. To this day, I don't know what happened. I lost like 700 followers. I was posting the same kind of content. I was showing up just as consistently. And it really made me feel rejected and disheartened. And I wanted to quit, but I didn't. And then it turned around eventually, but it took like 8 months for it to turn around.
They changed, of course, the algorithm. And based on this, only like 1 to 3% or so of your followers would then see your post and so on and so on. This was a huge topic. You could read about this everywhere. And I think I can totally feel this. A lot of people called it quit because of this. And I guess that there totally was a moment where you said, what the, am I doing here? However, you kept doing it. So I'd love a bit more. When did you start writing your book? When could you finish it then finally? And did you have the book then ready, the manuscript, and saying to the Penguin Random House, here it is, something like this? Or did you pitch it without, or was just having like a pitch template or something?
Yeah, so I did the process again, maybe not the most efficient way, but it is what it is. I had to kind of start where I needed to start. And it all started with, I think you probably saw my Substack where I found an old journal where I said, this year I'm writing my book. And it was 6 years later and I hadn't written a word. And I realized there's always excuses that are dressed up as legitimate factors, but they're excuses because it's hard work. Forget even the psychological fear and doubt. It's hard work and it's not easy to get published. Fortunately, there's so many more pathways opening up for publishing. So I decided in early 2023, I was going to write my book. I already had the title, The Cost of Quiet. I knew what I wanted to write about, and I knew I wanted to use the impetus of my personal experience, but also write what I know as a therapist about what healthy relationships look like, attachment science, how to communicate. So I decided everyone kept telling me, you'll never get published. It's impossible. I'm from New York, so I have a lot of family there. I know a lot of people in publishing, like not in Penguin Random House or anything, but like people who work for magazines, people who have published books. And they were all like, forget it if you're not famous or have some huge following on TikTok. So I said, okay, well, then I'm just going to work on my book and like maybe I'll just publish it myself. We'll see. And I started writing and I wrote Stream of Consciousness. I just dedicated the time and I quieted the little voice of doubt and fear in my head by saying, just write, don't edit. Don't agonize. Don't worry about making it good. Just write from the heart, write what you know, get words on the page. Because to me, that's the hardest part, getting started and feeling like you can. So I wrote my little heart out and I wrote, I don't know, a few hundred pages, but it was extremely messy. Then come to find when I started looking into agents, because my philosophy with that is, I'm going to try to get an agent. And if I can't, I'll self-publish, or if I can't get an agent and a contract. And if I can, then I'll see what the offer is and go from there. I didn't have like a fixed expectation or an idea that if I didn't get a big 5 publishing deal, it wasn't legitimate. I just wanted my book to be in the world and I wanted to explore my options. So then I learned that for nonfiction, at least, especially with Big 5, you have to write a proposal. And my agent, who's worked on a lot of big books, the proposals and her expectation of a proposal was very high. The samples she sent me were well over 100 pages. One of them was one of the most famous nonfiction books ever, written by a Stanford MD. The other one was written by someone who's like the head of Google, and they're talking about how they're friends with Oprah and Lady Gaga. And I just felt such a surge of imposter syndrome, and I'm also overwhelmed. I don't know how to write a book proposal. You have to do an overview of the book. Why this book? Why now? Why you? Right? How does it fit into the cultural milieu? How is your book an idea that will sell based on a competitive analysis, but slightly different from what's already out there? A whole sales and marketing plan, something I know absolutely nothing about, a summary of every chapter. I mean, it was extensive. So I did have a little bit of an emotional breakdown, and that's an understatement. And then, my agent said, well, if you're freaking out, you can pay someone to write a proposal for you, but it's like $30,000. So that wasn't an option for me. So I just thought, all right, I'm going to have to figure it out. And my agent was very clear where she said, look, I love you and I'm going to do my best job for you, of course, but I can't promise you'll get a contract. So you could do all this work and nothing comes of it. But I was not going to let that stop me. So I learned how to write the proposal. It took me about 2 months. I spent every minute of my free time that I was not in my office working on it. I had sticky pads all over, the full size sticky pads all over with like what my different chapters were about. And I realized that even though I'd written this book, Stream of Conscious, it was a mess and things had to be totally reorganized. So that was kind of worthless, but I wouldn't have gotten started without it. So it wasn't really worthless. I wrote the proposal. My agent gave me some feedback. I edited it, and then she took it out into the market. And I got a bunch of rejections, all people who loved the book, the writing, supposedly, but, I don't have a platform. But then a few publishers were interested, all big publishers. The book went to auction. And I ended up getting a deal. Then the deal was that I would turn in the manuscript in 6 months. And that's why I had to take 4 months off, because the proposal was now totally different from what I'd originally, same idea, but structured differently. And then when I turned in the manuscript, they thought the whole middle of the book, even though I wrote exactly what was in the proposal, was too scientific and maybe too technical for the average reader. So I had to redo the whole middle. So I am so happy to tell you that as I tell you this story, all the edits are done. It's like in cover design. It's gone to like legal. Yes.
You see this confetti party here.
Yes. So it was a long road and it's been a hard road, and it'll be 2.5 years by the time my book comes out from when I wrote my proposal to when I got the book published, when I get the book. Right now we're slated for February 2026.
Want to meet Colette inside the Online Writing Club? Join us for an exclusive live masterclass where Colette Fehr will share behind-the-scenes insights on writing, publishing, getting on stage, and building a meaningful presence online. So sign up now. And can you remember what was like the hardest note you ever got from your editor?
Yeah. Changing, there's a
Like,
scene. Yes.
yeah.
So and I fought to keep it in. So there's a scene, because I give vignettes that are case composites. And there's a scene that opens with a wife who walks in on her husband masturbating, and they get in like to porn, and they get in a big fight. And I felt very strongly about the way I'd written the scene. And I also felt very strongly about having the scene and opening right in the heart of the drama. And they wanted to change it and sanitize it. And I was like, and they scratched through the whole thing. And I was like, no, 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 no. This one has to stay. This is important. It's real. It's raw. It's going to be compelling to people. So the places where they changed the writing that, or changed things about the process of couples therapy, you do feel a little territorial about your words. I tried to accept all the edits I could live with. I did accept all the edits I could live with, and they know way more about that stuff. But when it came to my words and what I thought was powerful, there were places I took a stand.
And are you now happy about the outcome?
Yes, very. And I think they really steered me in a good direction. We've streamlined that. I mean, at one point I had 106,000 words, and now I have 70,000 words.
I see. Wow. So they condensed it then. Yeah.
Yes.
That's
and
crazy.
It's better. It's probably a better, the problem with a nonfiction subject matter expert book is that you're so in the weeds, and it can be hard to understand what the regular person knows and wants to hear versus being so steeped in the work of a couples therapist. So they really helped me have a better focus for like what the average woman wants to hear and needs to hear. So I definitely think it's much better. And I'm so grateful to have had my editors. They did an amazing job.
Yeah. And now after, the book is like somehow finished, and then you're going to go into the launch, pre-launch, launch phase and so on. I guess then in winter, or when do you start with like the pre-launch runway and everything?
So my understanding, like right now, it's with the like legal and then technical like copy edit. So they're looking at like grammar. Their art department's working on cover designs. We'll decide on the cover. And then about 9 months before, I'll probably get assigned a sales rep just to start that conversation. And then really about 6 months, 5 or 6 months before is where you really get into like the full launch phase. But I think about 9 months before, we'll have the cover and it'll be on Amazon and it'll go into pre-sale. So it's really not that far away in a sense. Like this summer, I think things will start to get going. But I'm just so relieved that the writing editing part is over.
Yeah, and I think the pre-launch runway is like the best time, because this is so exciting and everything. However, I heard with the pre-sales or pre-orders, I heard from Evelyn Skye, New York Times bestseller, Damsel and so on, you might know her, that she told me like that these book pre-sales, they wouldn't be like a real thing anymore. I don't know what you will tell me about this, but she said
I'll find out.
Pre-orders aren't working so well.
All my information is secondhand, and it's so interesting. Publishing, at least with a big publisher, I can't speak for everyone, it's very slow moving industry. And, my editors, their job is to make the book sound great. So they're like, this is all we're focused on. I'm constantly like, what's going to happen with this? And they're like, oh, you'll talk to sales and marketing about that. So I'm kind of discovering things as I go and from other friends. I have a friend who has a book coming out soon, and it's been nice to talk to other women in publishing and feel comforted that so much of my experience is not unique, that it's just the way it goes. But yeah, we'll see. I have no idea how all that's going to go.
Yeah, I'm so excited to hear more about this. And then next time we talk, let's say the next year or so, you're going to put your book in the background and then you can promote it. I love this. What kept you going after all these rejections, and why did you wanted to go on a TEDx stage?
So I actually really enjoy public speaking, even though I'm simultaneously afraid of public speaking. I'm really scared up to the event and then for about the first 60 seconds. And then I usually relax and feel fine. It's just our survival instincts that, about 75% of people have that. So I thought this would be a really great way to also talk about the message of my book, something that I would enjoy. It was just kind of on my bucket list, but also I had the opportunity to go to Penguin Random House in New York. They have this beautiful building and the lobby's all filled with books. And I got to meet my editors. It was so fun. And they mentioned during that time, I asked them, what else can I do or be doing that would be good for the book? And they said, well, if you could do a TEDx talk, that would be great. So, yeah, so they gave me the idea. With the rejections, at first you kind of go, oh, like I was surprised, to be honest, because I think I do pretty well as a speaker, but they get so many applications now. And I started talking to other people and I started interviewing people informally or taking them to coffee who either did a TEDx or people who were trying to do a TEDx. And I met people who had been applying for 2 years and had applied to like 40 or 50 and still not gotten one. So I started to realize, okay, this is just one of those things again that like can involve a lot of rejection. The hard part was that you don't get any feedback and you can't always reach someone. So I started trying to reach out to people and say, hey, I understand completely. You have so many wonderful applicants to choose from. Could you give me a little feedback, what it was about my application? But I never heard anything back from anyone except one. And I didn't hear back until I'd already applied to the 7th. And that's when I got the TEDx talk. And it just so happened that the theme of the TEDx talk I'm doing is empower. And my book is all about empowerment. So some of it is you've got to find a TEDx where you have not necessarily, right? Like just like what they say about publishing, there's always ways around it, but it helps to have a local connection to the place you're speaking. And then your theme, they want the theme of your talk to really fit the theme of that particular TEDx. So it finally lined up for me, but I had decided, Christina, I was going to apply for 5 years if that's what it took.
Love this interview? You love the Online Writing Club membership. You get weekly masterclasses with real authentic experts like Colette, plus support from a community of writers who actually get you. They have the same pain points and needs. So join us today. How do you reframe rejection so it fuels you instead of stopping you? Because, maybe some after one rejection, they already stop, whether it's pitching the media or, of course, they would want to get on a stage on TEDx. And I would love to know more about this. And another question here is also, did you then nominate yourself to get on stage?
Yes. So you have to apply yourself, and every TEDx talk is run. They're almost like franchises of TED, but they're operated separately. So they all have different requirements for the applications, but most of them are pretty meaty. For mine, I had to apply. I had to give a summary of my talk, an outline of my talk. I had to have 2 letters of recommendation. I had to turn in videos of me doing a speech. I had to talk about why, so there's all of that goes into it. Yeah. But that said, like everything else, like a book deal, anyone can get a TEDx talk, which is what's so cool about it. You don't have to be famous. You don't have to be talking about your career. The whole premise is ideas worth sharing. They want new ideas. And of course, there's nothing really new in the world anyway, but your unique take on the idea. So if anyone listening and watching has any interest in doing this, I definitely encourage you to apply. And back to your question about rejection, to start to build a muscle to tolerate rejection. Rejection hurts. It's in our wiring. There's a very good survival impetus for this, that if we're rejected historically from the herd, we would die. So now that we've evolved and we can take care of ourselves, theoretically, we actually still need the herd in a way. So our bodies causing pain when we're rejected is normal because it's a way of saying, don't step so far outside of the box that you're ostracized from society, because that will lead to your end. So if you don't feel any sting of rejection, you're probably not totally human. So it's not gonna feel good. And the more you change your mindset about it, and I also think in a way, the more you experience it, you realize it's not the end of the world. The place we get in trouble is that we get into our own head, and the rejection tends to play on a fear or an insecurity or a doubt we already have about ourselves. So when I get rejected from something where I feel totally confident in my value and worth, I might be disappointed, but I don't take it to the level of like, oh, what does this say about me? Where rejection's hardest is when we go, oh, does that rejection mean that I'm not good enough? So you've really got to like talk to yourself there, give yourself a lot of compassion, talk to yourself like you would your best friend, acknowledge the fact that it hurts, and then remind yourself that most people, almost everyone who's been successful, has gone through so many rejections to get there. They were willing to push through. They were willing to put themselves out there. Nobody, almost nobody, I'm sure there's an exception, is just successful because they were born and they just popped up into the world. Maybe like a couple nepo babies, but we've all experienced rejection. So it's a matter to me of, do you want it? How can you connect to your faith in yourself? And also sometimes maybe not good enough, but maybe we do have feedback that we learn about where we can improve, and to be open to that too, but to filter it. When you get feedback, I took acting classes for a while, and the acting world is so harsh, right? It's like the opposite of the therapy world. In the therapy world, everyone is so careful. Nobody ever wants to hurt anyone's feelings, and that's lovely. But in the acting world, it's like, you suck, you look fat, that wasn't good, right? Like right, like you look old, or the first acting class I went to, they had everybody get up and they said, how old do you think this person would play? Right? Like, not how old are you, but it's like, if you're 40 but you look like you're 55, they're going to tell you. So it requires a little bit of a thick skin, and I'm very sensitive. So this is something I've had to really work on. But the opposite is that because you don't want to get rejected or fail, you never go for anything you want. And that to me is the greatest tragedy. That's what people on their deathbed don't say. They regret getting rejected. They say they regret not taking more chances. So it's worth it to power through.
I know that you're also like a fan of this active dabbling. So the idea of putting yourself out there without getting attached to a specific outcome, which I love, and this can definitely help us show up for ourselves and also to be seen. So could you give an example of when that worked for you and how we can make this work as writers, authors, and so on?
Oh, I'm so glad you brought up active dabbling, because I think it's one of the most important things for growth. So what I see as a therapist a lot of the time, and even with writers, like my writer friends too, and even me in the past, it's like, we don't start because we don't know. We don't know exactly what we want. We don't know exactly what it looks like. We're not sure we'll be successful, right? We're too busy. There's all the excuses, but a big part of it can be not being sure what we really want. So active dabble is about just trying things, not worrying about where they lead, not having to be so strategic, not having to have everything line up so perfectly, like I'm going to do this because it's going to lead to this. Just getting out and exploring. And this is how I got started. And I would say, I think this might be probably the biggest reason I am where I am today. That and my mentality, my mindset. But I didn't know what I wanted to do exactly. I'd wanted to write a book for a long time, but I didn't know if that was the thing I was going to focus on. And I didn't have like a set goal. So I just started taking classes. First of all, I did, I love the artist's way. I'm sure a lot of your listeners are familiar with that work, like Julia Cameron, and the idea of like the morning pages and taking yourself on an artist date. So I signed up for a membership to this beautiful sculpture garden down the road for me that I've lived here for 28 years. I hadn't been to one single time. And I love the arts. Never gone. Always too busy, right? So I signed up for a membership. I went one afternoon every week, and I was like, I'm going to be here, and I'm either going to meditate, think, write, read. I'm just going to be here in this beautiful environment. And there was a statue there of a woman. It's still there, called Unfettered, meaning you're not chained down, you're free. And it's this woman in this exalted position. And I would look at her and just connect with that and the possibility. Then I took writing classes online through Gotham. I used to, before I got divorced, I was doing an MFA in creative writing, but I had to drop out and get a job. So I never finished it. So I took writing classes in all different kinds of writing. Like I tried fiction, nonfiction, memoir. Like I just dabbled, right? And enjoyed the classes. I took acting classes. So I did all these different things to just explore and like let it maybe not turn into anything. But what's funny is that even though I'm not going to become a professional actor, those acting classes did help me realize that I kind of want to be a therapist on TV. It also helped me for all the media I'm doing now. I met people in the classes that connected me to other people. And the headshot I now use everywhere was taken for my acting class. So these little pieces come together in ways you don't expect. So what I want to say to people is if you have no idea what you want to do, but you want something more in your life, like go rollerblading. It doesn't even matter if it makes no sense because you're going to find what lights you up by trying things. And it might be something unexpected you've never done before.
Subscribe to the Online Writing Club and connect with more than 12,000 soulful writers who are building their writing careers just like you. It's where serious writers grow no matter in which season they are. More than 12,000 writers have already joined. What are you waiting for? Subscribe to the Online Writing Club today and take your writing journey to the next level. Yeah, and talking about all the possibilities, I loved also the story, how you manifested to become a TV star and then started, this whole TV journey at a sushi bar, which I think is amazing. How did that random conversation in this sushi bar led you to a show being pitched and everything that came then?
Yeah. So, and as of now, I'm the only one who knows I'm a TV star, but eventually the world will know too. This is the mantra I say to myself. So through all my dabbling, I discovered that I love reality TV, first of all. That's how I decompress. I'm a big reader too, but I love to watch reality TV shows. I love to see the social experiment component. I love the relationship stuff. That's my thing. So that's kind of like the fun version. And through the acting stuff and all these other things I've been doing, I realized I would love to be on a reality TV show as a therapist. So I was writing about an idea I had for a dating show in a sushi bar. And I started chatting with the woman next to me because she was like, "You look so excited." And I told her about it. And then her husband showed up and she told her husband about it. And he was like, "Oh my God, my friend just started a production company. You should meet him." So he connected me with this guy and the guy was like, "Who are you? What?" Like he almost blew me off. But I was persistent with him. And when I pitched him, he thought my dating show idea was too expensive. But he was like, "I have another idea about last chance couples therapy. Are you interested?" And we filmed like a 5-minute, not a pilot, but like a trailer kind of thing. And so that's out there. I don't know what, if anything, will come of it. And then another guy I knew, because once you start getting some energy, you start talking about it more. And I was telling everyone, I'm like, I don't care if people think I'm crazy. This is what I want. And I'm going to talk about it and put it into the world. So there's my dating show has taken life. That's being pitched. We'll see what happens with that. And now I've started trying to apply to casting networks that cast like marriage and family experts for TV shows.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know anything really about this or how I'm going to make it happen. But I feel like I also once didn't know anything about publishing or how I would make my book happen. So if I continue to want this, I know I'll make it happen. It's just a question of how and when and where.
So before then, you got featured in print media, am I right? And online media. And now you're going beyond, because I thought that you were already featured, I think, AskMan.com and Oprah Daily and so on, which I think is amazing, you know?
Yeah.
And now you want to go like beyond beyond this and, you know, also be seen on TV, which I love. And I know that you're talking to yourself a lot and saying then, I tell myself like daily, I'm a TV star, I'm a TV star, I'm a TV star. And we now also know that manifestation plays a huge role in making this TV opportunity real, your book opportunity real, your TEDx opportunity real, everything in your life real. So do you have any advice for us how to approach this, how to manifest our life and everything we want in life?
Yeah. So I think that what holds people back most is that people feel like, oh, if I dare to like put it into words, then I'm going to be disappointed if it doesn't happen, or I'm going to embarrass myself. And I say we have to throw all that out. Like it's normal, and we have to get rid of it, because the truth is your subconscious mind, and this isn't woo woo nonsense. It's really the way the brain works, that the subconscious mind believes what it hears repeatedly. And this is why when people grow up in an environment where their parents are critical, let's say, they have a very tough inner critic inside their own head. So we can rewire our brains at any time. And the reason I say I am a TV star, is not because I'm a narcissist or I have delusions of grandeur. It's because I want my brain to know that this is possible, and I want my brain to believe it's already happened, so that I will take action that corresponds to that instead of letting self-doubt hold me back. Figure out what maybe doesn't feel completely true yet. So we call them like an aspirational affirmation. Affirmations are really how we manifest best. And write those things down as if they're already true, not like I will, like I am now. And say it to yourself over and over, and then let your mind visualize. There are people who can't visualize. So if you can't, don't worry, that's not going to stop you. But if you have a mind that can visualize, let it like come up with images. Picture yourself in whatever your mind creates, whatever you're wearing, and just see yourself as if it's already true. And what really happens then is that all of a sudden that energy and that belief, we start to do things that match up with those beliefs. So I do think I'll tell you, before I became a therapist, I would have thought this is a bunch of bullshit. And I probably would have thought it was very, very silly, but there is a real scientific reason it works. And most people who use these tools have found it to be very, very successful.
I know that you're an Alanis Morissette fan, and so you talked about this in your podcast, and you almost like lost your voice because you like sang in the rain, which I love. Like, what's the full story there? And was it ironic that it happened?
I love it. I mean, I think she's brilliant. She's the same age I am.
Isn't it ironic?
Yes.
Yeah, I love her so much. Yeah.
She's so good. She's so talented as a musician and as a storyteller and a writer. I mean, her songs are amazing. And that album, the Jagged Little Pill album, came out right when I graduated from college. I loved every song. Way back when, one hand in my pocket, I thought this is sort of my personal anthem, because she's like, I'm brave and I'm scared chicken shit. And I think that's really the way I often feel. So I just really connected with it. And when she came to Florida recently to do a concert, she was amazing, by the way. I took a train 3 hours and got a friend and her husband to go with me. And it was absolutely incredible. And I did lose my voice. I was singing all night. I didn't sleep, but it was so worth it. And when someone's song's just like a book, when something speaks to you and it resonates, right? That's the kind of stuff that touches our heart and soul. And I think really inspires us.
If you're like looking at everything you've accomplished so far, from like being a therapist to author, speaker, and TV star in the future. What's like the biggest lesson you've learned about yourself?
That we have to believe in ourselves, that everything will happen if you can believe in yourself. And that doesn't mean you have no fear or doubt. It just means that you come back to that belief and keep going, right? Persevere. The people who succeed are really the ones who don't quit. I think it's that simple. I really do.
And if you're listening to this and you're having like a big dream and you're thinking it is out of reach, or, it just exists as a daydream, definitely you can take a step towards this by just doing whatever Colette shared in our podcast today, which I really love. So Colette, thank you so much for this wonderful, wonderful conversation here. It was delightful to hear more about you and your journey.
Thank you for having me. I had so much fun.
For someone who feels like their big dream is out of reach, tell us what's one thing you can do today to take a step toward it.